The Solitaire Series, Episode 18, The Three of Spades, by Troy Lambert. Narrated by Troy Lambert. Copyright 2020, audio copyright 2025. For the first time in a long time, Jack Bardlow Jr. thought of his father. A Vietnam veteran, the man had been hard, but fair nonetheless. He'd taught Jack martial arts, street fighting, but more importantly, the art of using his words. Jack Sr. had been a large man, wide shoulders, blonde hair cut in a military high and tight, a length that never varied more than 1/8 of an inch until the day he died. His eyes were deep blue, his nose flat and wide, similar to what Jack Jr.'s had been before what he now thought of as the incident. His father's chin had been square, his jaw strong, his neck almost non-existent. It was like he was built to be a soldier, and nothing else. But when he returned from Nam, his dad had gone into real estate. Fellow agents said he could sell an igloo to an Eskimo, and they were right. His tongue was golden, his words woven like a silk rope he could toss over nearly anyone and lead them just where he wanted them to go. The man who did 100 push-ups a day until well after his 70th birthday when he was diagnosed with cancer that most of the family suspected was Agent Orange related, was also the kindest man Jack ever knew. He treated his wife like a queen, his son like a prince, trained to take over the throne of his business when he was gone, and his clients like equals he'd been born to serve. Jack Jr. thought of his father, his smooth and persuasive way with words, and his toughness as he looked at the 2 cards in his hand. One was a 10 of diamonds, the other a 4 of clubs. The bar in front of him was oak, and not a new oak. It was old, weathered, but had been refinished what appeared to be several times. It must be shined every night, because it, and the brass fixtures on it, gleamed. The room was crowded. He'd been promised a game he could win by his Romanian friend Simeon, but there didn't seem to be a game anywhere visible, and the large man who'd let him in through his office was nowhere to be found. He ordered a drink, one there was apparently no need for him to pay for. He'd intended to leave his ruined face uncovered, for shock value when he joined a game, but that didn't seem to be happening, so he put on the shaded glasses he often wore indoors. Jack hefted himself onto a bar stool. This required some effort, as his ruined right side often did not cooperate and lacked strength. He used his left hand to grasp a brass handrail on the bar, stabilizing his position on the seat, and then used that arm to pull his right leg up and place the ruined foot on the chair rail. His Doberman, Boris, sat next to the bar stool, vigilant and silent. Whoever owned the place had tried not to allow the dog in, but Jack rarely went anywhere without him. No one here stared. He seemed to be the only one who was alone. There were couples, groups, but no singles anywhere. Jack ordered an old-fashioned, with a straw, of course, and then set the cards down side by side. The 10 of diamonds was unusual, he knew. He'd used it to unlock gates and doors in the past, but he hadn't known the 4 of clubs was part of it until just a few moments before he came in here, when a man he'd just met separated one card from the other. What bothered him most was that he hadn't known. Jack had been a part of Solitaire, a large gambling consortium, for years, recruited by them early in his gambling career, until he'd pissed off the wrong people, and some of those same people learned what he'd inherited from his father besides a booming real estate business. But he should have known about the split cards, certainly, before some stranger did. They'd come after him, and he'd used his knowledge and his skills to avoid death, although barely. If it hadn't been for Boris, he would have died. A sharp bark interrupted his thoughts. A woman approached. She was short, of Asian descent, with dark hair, darker eyes, and pale skin accented by bright red lipstick. She smiled, revealing bleach-white teeth. Her dress, a simply cut cocktail one, dipped low in a V in front, although her small breasts did not create any cleavage to speak of. The dress was short, but not too short, and thin legs led his eyes down to at least 3-inch heels, revealing she was even shorter than he originally thought. Boris was now standing. "Ruhig," Jack commanded. Boris obeyed, but still stared at the woman, a low growl coming from the back of his throat. "Hi, Jack," she said. She held out her thin left arm with the thinner hand at the end, and he instinctively reached out to shake it. As he did, Boris growled louder, and Jack looked down to see he'd visibly stiffened. The woman looked down at the dog. "He does not like me?" she asked. "Apparently not," Jack answered, dropping his own hand. "I'm Yuko," she said. "What did you tell him?" "To be quiet." "He doesn't seem to want to." "He won't bite you, unless I tell him to, or unless you try to hurt me." "What did he do to the person who hurt you?" She gestured at his right side. "He killed them." She stared at Boris. "Them?" Jack nodded. "Maybe you should tell me how I can help you." "My boss sent me over to keep you company while you wait." "What am I waiting for?" "I don't know." "Sits," Jack told Boris. The dog sat, but stayed vigilant. Jack gestured to the stool next to him. The woman hoisted herself onto the stool and sat. Her feet did not reach the footrest, but instead she swung them back and forth, causing the skirt to ride up her thighs a bit. Jack looked away. Women didn't usually arouse him, not anymore, and certainly not in a place like this. Maybe that's what Boris sensed and didn't like. "Tell me what happened," she asked. He wanted to pretend he didn't know what she was asking, but he saw the way she looked at him, not looking away from his scars, but instead studying them. "I don't like to talk about it," he said. "It's a long story." The image of his father again haunted him, not the strong image from his youth, but of the dying man in the cancer ward, the one who'd handed him the ring, the deck of cards, and who'd grasped his arm with more strength than seemed possible moments before his death. "It's the key," he'd whispered. "The key to everything." Those last words haunted him. A week later, the Queen of Diamonds, the bitch from Solitaire, had sent for him, asking odd questions about things she couldn't possibly know. Jack had been whole then. A month later, the first man attempted to kill him. 2 months and 2 assassination attempts later, 2 men came. 6 months after that, Jack had been able to walk again. "Well," she said, "we have time. Tell me, Jack." Suddenly, he found he wanted to tell her. Maybe not her specifically, but someone. He opened his ruined mouth, half of it sagging on his face, but at that moment he was thankful he could still speak, and speak clearly. Everything that had been done, the sacrifices to his nose, his vision, the black skin that remained, none of it had touched his teeth or his tongue. His jaw still worked. So he spoke, and once he started, he could not stop. The sun peeked over the hills behind his home, sending shadows dancing across the ocean in front of him. Jack stretched before his morning run, jogging in place and actually doing some additional work with an elastic band around his knees, rapid squats, and even a few kicks. He dropped the band, hung it in the garage, and then entered the code to close the door. Boris ran beside him, leashed, not because the dog needed to be, but to make others he encountered comfortable. The tether hung loosely between the pair. Jack was fast, his feet flying over the ground, his form nearly perfect. His father, in addition to the endless push-ups, had run at least 2 miles 3 times a week at least. He had passed along that love of running to Jack, although he did more running than push-ups. The pain of his father's death was still fresh, but running distracted him, made it better. Jack carried mace, but otherwise ran unarmed, despite Solitaire's recent interest in him. They weren't the type for public executions, and Boris was enough of a deterrent to nearly anyone who would approach him while he ran. The Solitaire felt good and cool on his skin, and he and Boris followed their usual route, one the dog knew as well as his owner did. The 2-mile loop went first uphill away from the house and then came back down on the last leg. Jack found the running downhill as hard or harder than the uphill, but he had been training for it, increasing his run time. But this morning, he'd opted for a shorter distance. On the way back to the house, he'd seen the car down the street, odd for this neighborhood, but he ignored it. That's the thing he regretted most later on. Boris was on edge as soon as they reached the driveway, so Jack was too. He approached the garage cautiously, mace at the ready. He entered the code, and the garage door eased up. Even before it completed his cycle, Boris rushed forward, barking. He disappeared inside, and Jack heard a yelp and then silence. He backed away, moving to the side of the garage away from the house and working his way toward the rear gate. His back was to the wall, his senses on high alert. He looked left and right, searching for movement, anything. If they'd hurt his dog, he'd kill them, but not without torturing them first. The first thing he felt was the drip from above. A drop of liquid hit his wrist and it burned. Jack stared at it and then looked up. He moved left, where he might not have survived the encounter. Clear liquid cascaded from above, covering the right side of his body. As soon as it touched his skin, an itching and burning sensation followed, starting as an annoyance and moving rapidly toward real pain. He tried to run. His right leg suddenly didn't want to work, so he limped. He heard laughter, but only through his left ear. His right one seemed to be plugged. He felt something on his arm sliding and looked down. The flesh there was covered in bubbling blisters. His brain signaled him to scream. If he did, he couldn't hear himself. Then there was a man in front of him, a man holding something, yellow, flickering. His left eye registered a lighter. His right eye, nothing. The man tossed it. Jack ducked, or thought he did. He heard another man behind him. Then he saw the black and tan shape of Boris. The dog leaped. The man who threw the lighter fell. Jack smelled smoke as he did, something sweet burning. The fallen man's arms came up. Boris ducked them and went for his throat. Blood flew. Someone was screaming. Jack turned to see who it was. A man stood behind him. His face was white, his lips pale, a pistol hung in one hand by his side. He wasn't screaming. He just stared. Jack realized the screams were coming from his own throat, although they seemed to be fading. He held up his right hand. It was on fire. He dropped it just as the bullet that was Boris flew into the second man, and jaws clamped on his wrist. The pistol fell, blood flowed. The man fell, clutching his arm. Jack stepped back, fell, rolled onto his right side, felt nothing, rolled to his left, felt gravel on his cheek, pain in his right arm, excruciating pain. He screamed, tried to crawl one-handed. Boris raced away, his lean body flying low over the ground. He saw faces a few moments later, heard sirens, felt a rough tongue on the left side of his face. Then reality faded to nothing. The woman stared. She didn't say a word. She looked first at Jack, then at Boris. Her mouth moved, but Jack had seen the reaction before. On those rare occasions when he told his story, the reaction was always the same. The listener had no idea what to say. Yuko's legs swung faster. She stared right and left as if looking for an exit, an escape from the conversation, from the situation. "You asked," Jack said after waiting a few moments. "Needless to say, I do a lot less running these days." "Understandable," she said quietly. "Would you like to come with me?" "Come with you where?" "I have a room. We could—" She glanced at Boris. "Get some rest." "Sure," he heard himself say. "I could use some rest." She stood, with much less enthusiasm than she'd had before, and he scooped his 2 cards from the bar, put them in his pocket, and clicked his tongue for Boris to follow. As he slid painfully from the stool, Jack noticed something. A card had fallen to the floor, from her lap or elsewhere, and landed face up. It was a 3 of Spades, but the letters glowed oddly on the dark floor, not fluorescent, but a dark blue. In the corner of the middle spade on the card, a red dot flashed. Curious, he bent awkwardly to pick it up. Without saying a word, he slid it into his pocket next to the other ones. "You coming?" Yuko said over her shoulder. "Right behind you," he said. As they followed, Boris growled quietly, once, and then went silent. Jack promised himself he would be careful as they entered the dimly lit hallway. There were several doors on either side, But Yuko stopped at the fourth one and reached into a small pocket on her dress, searching for something. Jack caught up. "I've dropped my key," she said. Jack pulled the card from his pocket and handed it to her. "Is this it?" She nodded, put it in front of the pad next to the door. It clicked and swung open. Jack couldn't see a thing, but he followed the small young woman inside anyway. Thanks for listening to the Solitaire Series, Episode 18, The Three of Spades. Stay tuned for the next episode in the series, The Two of Diamonds.